Hello and welcome to our ET Pharma webinar in association with AVEVA. Today's topic of discussion is titled From Plant to Cloud, Transforming Life Sciences with Data Ecosystems. This is a very important topic and we've been able to put in together a set of some very brilliant minds. So I'd like to quickly introduce them. Dr. Pavan Bhat, Executive Director at NATCO Pharma. Thank you, Dr. Bhatt. Phani Mitra, Chief Digital and Information Officer at Dr. Reddy's Labs. And then we have Narendra Saini, Chief Digital and Data Officer at Lupin. And then we also have Thomas McCarthy, Industry Principal, Global Life Sciences at AVEVA. So thank you, all the attendees. It's post lunch, so please do grab your coffee. This is going to be a very interesting subject of discussion. Very briefly, I'd like to say that in the last decade or so, the Indian pharmaceutical manufacturing sites have been under tremendous scrutiny from the US FDA. Modernization efforts have mostly centered around digitization so as to remove human intervention as much as possible. So, adoption of data, digitization tools, these are still issues which are very much in central focus, and we couldn't have got a better opportunity than to speak to our esteemed panel experts on this show. So, the way we will go is like in the next 40 minutes, we will discuss the nuances of what's happening on these digitization efforts. How is cloud helping in terms of securing data, in terms of having seamless integration, and then the level of compliance of data integrity also goes up. Um, uh, I would like to throw a couple of points so that there is enough clarity. 25% of increase in observations have been found around investigations and root cause analysis in 2023 versus 2018. That's the McKinsey figure. And there are many such data points which can be brought up from time to time. But, the necessity of data management tools is very high and a very high priority for Indian companies as well. So, with that brief introduction, I would like to now bring in our panel experts and to kind of know from them exactly where the industry stands on some of the key issues. So, my first question will be to Dr. Bhatt. Dr. Bhatt, you are still in that phase where you are still implementing a lot of digital solutions. Briefly, and that would be my request to all our panel experts, we need to be brief in our responses because we need to pack in enough punch in a very small, short time duration. What are the adoption challenges that you have faced? How good has been your journey so far in terms of navigating these new techniques and tools with that same goal of avoiding as much as possible the tough observations from regulatory authorities?
Yeah, thanks, Vikas, and thanks, CT Pharma, for inviting me to be part of this panel discussion. I think our industry is divided into probably three buckets. One is the digital leaders, then there are the digital laggards, and then there are others who are somewhere in between, right? So our journey in terms of digitization is in the early phase. As NATCO Pharma, we recognize the value of going digital and hopefully paperless in terms of trying to eliminate issues that frequently come up in terms of finding papers and having to explain a piece of paper, whether it is innocuous or malicious in nature, right? Nothing we do is malicious, but even an innocuous paper raises a lot of concern and doubt. So I think industry recognizes that and is trying to avoid that sort of uncomfortable situations arising in a audit. Having said that, I think the challenge is that um, there is a lot of equipment and pieces of instruments that have to be able to communicate with your digital, your ambition to go digital and paperless. 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, being able to talk and transmit data, uh, as well as that is the hardware part, the software part of people being able to embrace and adopt this sort of new initiative. I think those are all some real challenges in terms of trying to bridge this gap between, going from paper to a digital sort of setup.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point to start with. I think from someone who's starting with the journey to someone who's really matured, I think that's where Phani can come in. Phani, your experiences so far, how good it has been, what more can be done, if you can tell us.
Thanks, Vikas, and thanks, ET Pharma, for the opportunity to have this chat. And I think it's also a very important conversation for the industry overall. If you look at how the data integrity itself is defined in the early 2000s, we started off with this entire concept from FDA of Alcoa. And a lot
Yeah.
of people would talk about attributable, legible, and contemporaneous and a bunch of other things that go along with that Alcoa definition. uh, Digital interventions essentially take away some of these requirements because they're naturally that. For instance, legibility no longer is a concept that is relevant anymore. Contemporaneous, more or less, as much as possible, is already not an important construct anymore, and so on. So, I think as an industry, some of us have moved, many of us are having the right intent to get there. I think the whole shift from this Alcoa to a larger digital first data integrity is pretty much is an intent. I see it across industry peers, and it's a very, very good sign. Uh, from our own journey, I think it's more than 10 years. I think it's a little more than that as well. But at least in the last 10 years, we have made significant progress in terms of defining some of these things. And when you look at the data integrity definitions across at least the three broad buckets of manufacturing, quality control, as well as quality assurance, and there are of course the R&D and other elements of it. But at least in these three large buckets and R&D, the core digital systems allow you to make the processes, more or less naturally collecting the data and removing the human intervention. So you take the human out of the loop, and that automatically helps you, become more and more compliant. So that is something that we have seen working pretty much very well. But if I have to just summarize, there is obviously a certain area where, uh, from people making products to machines making the products and people just watching them make it correctly. There is a lot of work that we have to do with the people and how they work with the systems. So the next range of issues and challenges, as you see them in the 483s as well, is about completeness of data, consistency, computer
Yes.
system validations, user access restrictions, and things like that. So the nature of or the benchmark is rising. I think that's the biggest shift I have seen in the last 10 to 15 years, is the benchmark for compliance and the definition of what is compliance is changing. The intervention levels are changing from moving from paper to machines to teaching the people how to work with these machines and systems, and how do you keep them consistent. So that is a big shift that we're seeing as an industry.
Mhm.
If I were to just summarize, and of course it's a very exciting area, so we can talk through as we go forward as
Sure.
well.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yeah, very important points that you made, and in fact, resonates a lot with what Narendra had to share on the entire digitization challenges, where he had actually mentioned about compatibility of information, whether it is a consumable format. You'd like to throw some light on that, Narendra, right now?
First of all, thank you for inviting me for this discussion, and thanks, Dr. Pavan and Phani, for putting that thing in place. I think when it comes to the data integrity part and then taking data from plant to the cloud, I think uh, there are many aspects of it, right? Considering that the security aspect also becomes has become important in last around 5 years or so, lot of things, lot of technology implementation, but also segregation of networks like such as IT/OT segregation has become very very important. And then how what kind of a data is coming to the systems and how we are utilizing those data sets is also another very important aspect. So yeah, I think by and large, when we look at the overall from plant to cloud, right from bringing data, choosing data, what equipments, how to go the data, how to put it through the network, and then the firewalls, and then bring it to the cloud, and what is the security of the cloud as well, because there's a lot of apprehensions about the business teams sending their data to the cloud. Even if we tell them that, well, sending the data to the cloud does not really mean that your data is getting exposed to any external party, but that that's a change of mindset, right?
Mhm.
Even though we can have always containerized our own separate instance, then also there are certain changes. So change management becomes very important part. So in another conversation, because we were talking about people, process, and technology.
Yep.
So it starts with people, then the process design, then the technology. But after technology comes in, then it actually goes in the reverse path. Then after the technology comes in, then we have to see whether processes are right or we need to redefine and reprocess or re-engineering of the processes happen. And then it has to go back to the people because first it started with thought, but then now it has to start with the practice. And these are the people who will have to practice that, right? So I think what Phani also mentioned, people from people to the medicine to machine to medicine is a big step. I think it starts with people and ends with people, on the other end. And I think we can talk about it more, but I think this is how people process technology. Again, process to people is the entire cycle. That's how the cycle is completed.
Mhm. What about your own organization? Has it been a good journey so far? I mean, have you encountered some challenges? I'm asking that question because on and off we see this. You mentioned about data security, and even today there was a news about a big insurance company losing a lot of data. Again, the cybercrime part of it is becoming so crucial. Is it something that you've put enough safeguards on, or do you think there are still some vulnerable spots?
Yeah, I think around 5 years back, just before the COVID or around the COVID times, the and when the COVID vaccine became important, a lot of attacks on the pharma companies have happened, and we've seen
Yeah,
across the globe. India's, also I think almost all major
companies. Yeah.
pharma majors have experienced that, and that means we have to up the game. That's very clear, and I think all of us as an industry also, I think we have done that. We have separate CISO office which has come into place. We are also spending a good amount of time and money on people awareness. Finally, I think security has two aspects. One is how the attacker is planning it, right? So even if you put enough safeguards for anything coming to a network, there is still a part where endpoint security becomes important, and
Yeah.
that's where it is largely led by people. If they are aware what is coming, and they can block it right there and not really get into different um, I would say scenarios in which they can just click a link or open something, and so that is where the awareness becomes very important. So it's not just these systems. It's
Mhm.
again back to awareness. I think we made significant stride when it comes to both investment, but also people awareness, employee awareness. I think we have made a lot of efforts, and I think that's where I think mature companies have grown too. So our company, I think even at Lupin, I think we have done significant investment. We have certain policies, revisions of those policies and the methods, and anything that new comes in, we make sure that we inform our teams, and we do sufficient communication on the mail, even otherwise doing the games or gamification of those things, just to ensure that there's a sufficient pull and sufficient awareness that is getting created. By and large, I would say successful, but yeah, even a single mistake can expose lack of awareness. So yeah, I think it's a constant endeavor that we have to continuously work on.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Funny, you want to come in there on the same challenges? I mean, there are leakages that keep coming, despite the fact that you kind of keep enhancing your security systems. Does it make your data vulnerable? Is that a challenge that keeps you bothering all the time?
Yeah, I think if you have data, it would leak. That's the biggest challenge across industries. We're seeing with retail, we're seeing with FMCG, of course, we're seeing with pharma. I think it's just purely from an information security, data security perspective. You can never relax when it comes to data security. Uh, Obviously, and just so that everybody who's listening in also gets a frame of it, what we have been good at is to protect what we call the perimeters reasonably well, right? So
Yeah.
essentially, all of us know how to protect the fort walls enough, right? The next step is basically, for people who have gotten, left some doors open, so you've purposefully left it open for a very useful activity to happen, but the door is open, right? So there are these places where there are vulnerabilities that you let come in, and that is obviously the continuous scanning and watching that you end up doing for it. And the more important things is our own internal folks falling into a phishing attack or slipping on some of these policies despite all the awareness and limits around that. So I think we can never relax on this part, but I think I feel fairly comfortable that as an industry and as a company, our perimeters are reasonably secure. And I think we continuously have to watch for what happens within the systems, what happens to administrator privileges and things around that. So sometimes innocently, sometimes maliciously, but I think that's the part that we would end up watching for more often than not. Yes.
Right. Dr. Bhatt, since you've started a little late in this entire journey, have you put in place something that probably makes you more secure? You can be a little more bold about it.
So I think because our pharma industry has, I think, gone through at least, which is publicized, two data breaches, right? At least that we know of. Having said that, from a different perspective, I'll tell you that these phishing emails, they're getting even, all the more creative all the time in terms of using, like the CEO or the presidents as a requesting information and stuff like that, and sending these sorts of links. Somebody who's not well informed is going to react to that because of the fact that it is coming from, let's say, quote unquote, some real higher. Having said that, I think one in our industry, especially, data anywhere is very critical. But our industry sometimes, if it can really set you back, because I think what happened in one of our um, uh, peer companies is that they breached and they got into data, and we work with them, and there are customers who get really affected because of the fact that they have to probably regenerate and recreate data, right? Which is extremely time consuming and expensive. The proprietary nature of it is a separate discussion. It is a fact that it really can paralyze operations. It can paralyze the entire company. The company that went through it really got affected badly in terms of its ability to deliver, its customer commits, its ability to reprioritize things that were lost and had to be recreated. So from our perspective, while we are new, I mean, our IT colleagues do a wonderful job of trying to sensitize people, but that is, the concern is always there, because as you try to protect more, these people are getting more and more creative, right? So, uh, that's about it. I mean, we just hope that we try to keep our data as secure as we can, and try to create other sorts of options, so that if almost like you have to be prepared that at some point there may be something, and if you have to do what sort of remediation and recovery sort of thing that you do. Although in our operations always there is a recovery option and SOP always that is in place, right? But that is more for not for these sorts of situations. So in our company, I think our IT does a very concerted effort of trying to keep people aware. But then, as something you do, there's a more creative phishing email that comes out with a link and or trying to do other things in terms of accessing things to your backdoor or whatever, right? So I don't know all the right terminologies and how they do it, but I see it all the time because it comes to me also, and I know it comes from really the CEO. So I think younger professionals can probably get almost intimidated and scared in terms of reacting to that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that draws me to the next point, and it's not about individual companies. As an industry, we have been facing these issues. Uh, the contradiction is that McKinsey says that the number of OAIs that Indian companies have got in the last 4 or 5 years have significantly come down, but there are some other glitches that need to be ironed out. So, having said that, you keep seeing these documents from the US FDA and the warning letters keep coming back to you, hitting very hard on issues like torn documents were found in gunny bags, loaded in trucks, and then they put it together and then they find something that is kind of egregious. How do you think, those issues are to be sorted? It's at a very human level, and that's where I think this whole concept of putting things on data, let's completely rule out human interventions.
Yeah.
So everything is stored, and then you mentioned that what if something really goes away from there? What exactly will be the solution? So we don't, and it's pretty embarrassing that it keeps coming back. Probably one or two instances gives us those glowing red lights that this is not the way to go, and yet you still see those things coming up. You'd like to take it, Phani?
Yeah, I think there is only one way out of this, Vikas, and that's to go digital. I think as long as you have paper and people, it's always going to be messy. We can train them, we can put in policies in place, we can tell them the right intent, and so on. And despite sometimes the management's commitment and the intent of the larger organization, you will end up having the last mile people doing something silly. You know, sometimes it's not even malicious, right? Sometimes it's just plain silly, and you see it all the time. And I personally think there is no way out but for the industry to go digital on some of these basic systems. I can't foresee Indian industry not having LIMS systems and QMS systems being digitalized, and many of these companies probably will really struggle to be around, in the next 3 to 5 years if we don't go that way. So I think step one, 100%, at least the core processes 100% digitalized is the only way to go. The second step, like I've mentioned, is teaching the people how to work with these digital systems, because you bring the same old paper mindset to the digital systems. Again, you end up seeing people doing silly things because now the systems are smarter. This is not paper anymore. The systems know more. Sometimes it's just that, and hence the huge shift that we end up investing into is the second wave of, like I said, first wave is to digitalize the processes and make them completely human independent in some form. The second is to teach people to behave better with these systems, because they have to be taken to the new world as well. And then comes the third and fourth steps, which are obviously where you go beyond compliance and get some benefits and all of that, but we can probably keep it for the later part of the conversation. But to me, these two are non-negotiables, and it's just a matter of time. And the faster people act on this, the better, because I don't see a way out. I don't see a way to continue to be on paper and still be compliant. At least in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't think it's even a choice.
For sure.
So, because sorry, interestingly, I'll share with you that while in our journey, which is still nascent, the digital part of it is is so empowering, because you could have right from the person entering, checking in, all the way through and through, because we've had in the, historically, auditors going and checking attendance, and based on something that they find on the shop floor and something like that. So then there are controls that you can put, where in terms of learning management, and if you're not in terms of your SOP, where you're handling a critical operation and you've not signed off that you've reviewed that SOP, it blocks you. I mean, the ability to control these things rather through processes is incredibly empowering. And also the fact that now, if you have data in a digital format, as the industry is migrating from simple to maybe complex products, where there is multivariate influences in terms of processing, quality, material, everything attributes, the ability to analyze that data and get meaningful information is only possible if you are maintaining your controls digitally.
No, in fact, there is the entire history is there. I mean, the whole idea is like, when the investigator comes, there isn't any iota of doubt that something has gone missing. That was the start of it, overwriting. And I remember some of those older warning letters, which used to be, completely out of the imagination. It was so from there to now, it's been quite a dramatic change for sure. Narendra, I'd like to have your thoughts also on this.
Yeah, well, I think two parts, Phani and Pavan had already addressed. Second part, which we'll have to look at, we implemented ADMS long back, and then we have gone through a series of change, because initially we figured out that people were not really very savvy about looking at the information on computer screen or desktop screens, right? And they were still used to of taking a print and then going through it, mark or do whatever they want, and then probably destroy that document. I think that change is happening, and it's again a change management. Probably the it's about also the generation gap, because at the workplace, the older generation has different ways of working, and the newer generation are pretty okay with the higher screen time and resolution and all. So I think that's the only other part. And the change management, again, as I said, that starts with people, so ends with also people. So that's with the last leg we'll have to take care. At our place, I think in Lupin, we have been able to address it to quite an extent. I believe everyone would have faced these challenges, and we probably will have to do it as long as we have a mix of workforce. Once we have Gen Zs and this is coming in everywhere, I think then things will become a lot more streamlined. Yes.
Yeah, I hope we don't see those kind of observations. It's been like 6, 7 years, and it just keeps coming. Just when you feel like, okay, everything is fine now, people have gone through the adoption part, and now it will not happen. And again, you see the same thing coming up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
important
you
is that
mentioned,
we can put in as much control as possible. So like
yeah,
print control and document saving control and all those things can be done.
yeah,
Part of the control, but
hmm,
the practice is something which is again people practice, right? So both
right,
mixed together. It's a solution that comes together and not just a standalone technical solutions only, right? Yeah.
sure, sure.
See,
Now,
because
I mean, as I,
sorry, because of just a
yeah,
one point, a
yeah,
practical
go ahead.
problem is the fact that when you have a site with thousands of employees, right, like Funny mentioned, there's only so much you can uh, try to educate and counsel people, and
Very true.
invariably there will be somebody who forgets, or has a bad day and does something, right? And going digital completely eliminates that option.
Yeah. No, so in sync with that thought, I was actually going to ask: do you think that the industry is synchronized on this particular aspect? I'd like to go to Funny first, because there are like very heavily invested companies, and they do have a huge responsibility with so much of inspections happening. And then on the other side, you have companies which are struggling even with the revised Schedule M, um, in terms of what they're going to do in the next 2 3 years. Even they have been making going submissions. With all of these changes happening, do you think every company can actually go through this digital journey, or do you think there could be a situation where many may not be able to survive this kind of a change?
So, because I think it's a very important question for pretty much every company to think for themselves, because I think it's at some point going to come back to a question of survival. The regression to mean, as we call it in the analytics world, right? At some point in time, it will come back, and you can skip it for a while, but you will end up spending that. So there are 2 3 reasons why companies end up delaying some of these decisions, even with intent. For instance, the cost of, I think we were just talking about it, cost of non-compliance to cost of compliance and things like that. So I think the whole idea is the needle is switching to that point where it is no longer an option. And I think there is that intent absolutely clear, even in much smaller companies. The number of people who walk up to you at an IPA or any other place and ask you what's the strategy, what should we go with, as well as the number of even homegrown companies that are building these systems, to me are proxies of a renewed interest in the industry that this is the way to go. If you look at the number of homegrown tech companies that are trying to operate in the space of LIMS and QMS, for example, because it's a proxy, right? Like somebody is wanting to build a business, that means they see a demand. So I think that all the proxy indicators tell you that there is the right intent. In some places where people have delayed the decisions on digitalization in this area for whatever reasons, eventually they're going to catch up, at some point in time. And I think the next 3 to 5 years becomes increasingly crucial, both because the business aspirations, like what Dr. Pavan was saying, as you go to more and more complex products, steriles, the elements of the nature of dosage forms changing, the operations changing, etc. It just becomes increasingly difficult to operate in the old world. And that, I believe, because there is an absolute right intent at play, and people, whoever end up making a short-term decision, will eventually pay for it and then end up spending and doing the right thing. And that's what I meant. In a period of 8 to 10 years, I think it's just going to be at a much different place when it comes to digitalization of these processes. There is no other way.
Right. And I hope those are aligned with international regulatory systems,
Yes.
including that of India.
Yes, they are, and you see increasingly active thinking from regulators both in India and internationally on how they are holding companies accountable to some of these standards, because
Yeah.
and I think we kind of briefly mentioned there is this element of digitalization that moves from being a ticket to the game to actually a ticket to winning more, right? In some places, and I can maybe talk about it from our own example. When we started with digitalization, it was for compliance, it was for better control of processes and so on, right? But if we go to the journey, the 2.0, 3.0 of that journey, we suddenly see digitalization as a business lever, as a productivity enhancer, as an opportunity to actually run our operations a lot more efficiently and things like that. So the whole idea of the digital lighthouse and World Economic
Yeah.
Forum conversations and so on, you're essentially taking digital, and everybody has to take that journey, right? You go from digital for compliance to digital for business productivity and efficiency as a ticket to win. I think that's a journey. Eventually, like I said, everybody will go through those 2 or 3 phases to get there. Just digitalization for the sake of compliance, to digitalization for sake of better, efficient operations, to digitalization for competitive advantage in some way. I think that's the 3 phase journey all of us will get through, some slowly, some quickly, but I think that's the way it has to be.
That's probably where the management buy-in also comes, right? I mean, when you actually make so much of investments, your incomes, the benefits should be tangible and should be seen within a horizon. So, right?
I think because
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
journey
Talk about it.
the journey is going to require initial periods of investment before you see the return. But once you have the commitment to do it, the returns automatically come. It's a curve where the initial period is where the expenses are increasing and very little return. and then the investments go down, and you'll start seeing the returns go up. So it is the sort of executive sponsor who can drive the speed with which you want to adopt. And another thing I can mention is that it depends on your facilities, whether they are brownfield, greenfield, where are you in that? Because most Indian large pharma have got a variety of facilities, manufacturing facilities, and it's always trickier to do it in a 20-year-old facility where the equipment has to be upgraded. There is a cost of upgrading versus purchasing a new one, and so on and so forth. So it's not just a binary decision. It is also the fact that you have to go through this process of evaluation, and also I think Narendra mentioned about this this generational sort of thing, which will automatically turn over, and you get more newer employees who are comfortable with in terms of handling this sort of change.
Got it.
I think a light-hearted comment, because I was making to somebody offline at a conference, is you look at the cost of what you'll pay a consultant when you go into non-compliance, and suddenly this suddenly looks like peanuts.
Yeah,
So,
it's far better to go. Yeah, I am aware of those kind of humongous figures charged by the hour. So yeah, it's yeah. I mean, at least from the cost part of it, it becomes unbearably expensive. So we have some questions in our chat box. I'd like to bring those up also. So Viresh Patil actually is asking, what are your plans for data backup and disaster recovery in a fully digital lab environment? Any one of you wants to take? Narendra, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think architecturally, if I have to really look at, if I have to design any system, I would definitely plan for backup HA. Largely, in fact, I would plan for HA, and then look at the DR component. So I think it's natural part of setting up the architecture, right?
Mhm.
So when you, I don't know who asked the question, but then I think there's a part of the architecture then, and solving it that way rather than looking at piece by piece for lab solution only. It is for the entire business how we set up the architecture, right? Yeah.
Sure. There is another one, I think, which probably can be handled in his presentation. Thomas is from Surendra Dola. If GXP system servers data goes to cloud, what type of issues may be faced? So I think we probably can address that a little later in the show.
Okay.
Yeah. Right? Okay, cool. So we'll move to the next question. What advice do you have for life science companies undergoing digital transformation, particularly in navigating the cultural and operational shifts required to move from traditional plant-based systems to cloud ecosystems? Anyone wants to take this? Phani, you want to take this?
I can take a stab at it. I think there are two parts to this question. One is the cultural aspect of any digital transformation at this point in time, right? So the biggest intervention we found to be working is the effort that goes into change management and capability building, because this is an
Right.
absolutely new way of operation. How do you explain to the people who have been operating in a certain way that this is how the world is going to be, right?
Right.
And that's the essential idea of change management, the emotional element of it. And there is a very important element of capability building, because, like I said, in the next 3 to 5 years, the entire industry is going to be here. So if you don't learn this way of operation, you're going to be left behind as well. So there is an investment that the companies are willing to make into their employees, and it's a great way to motivate people to come on board as well. So a significant part of our effort is what we usually internally call certified to operate and certified to lead. And these are very important elements. Certified to operate, I think Narendra touched upon it, is basically the younger folks are easier to adopt these digital systems. So certified to operate is easier because the operators get on board, the analysts get on board. Eventually they'll get there. But a
Yeah.
lot of senior folks who are middle management layers who are actually managing these people
Hmm.
sometimes feel left out. And there is a very
Right.
important intervention we call certified to lead, because how you were reviewing a QC result in the old world to how you will review it with the LIMS system in the room is going to be very different, right?
Mm.
So it's extremely important for organizations to actually invest in the middle management layer
Yeah.
to say how are you certified to lead in this new environment, because so that the team still look up to you, and that is a very critical part of change management, because a lot of times inordinate amount goes into training the operator, training the analyst, training everyone else, but you somehow assume that the middle management will move automatically. And
Right.
that's an important piece I would really want to leave as a point for all of us to think about here. The plant systems, to cloud, I'm sure Thomas would cover it. It's not that big a problem as I would see it from in the way that the systems have been maturing in terms of what our experience has been, both in terms of GXP, CSVs, all the associated works that go there. But I would let Thomas cover it as he goes through that. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll quickly move to this point about investment in an entire manufacturing system. Because if it is to do with a big automobile company, we've seen like the cost goes through the roof on in terms of getting the whole thing synchronized so that there isn't any interruptions in the data flow. Do you think it's a massive cost actually, to get this rolling out? Uh, is this like a investment which probably may scare away companies from going for it? Narendra?
In fact, it's a very good question. So we basically need to differentiate between the brownfield and the greenfield. The greenfield, I think, is gonna be straightforward, very simple. Single system can actually manage multiple things. We have, systems which are fairly mature now, and brownfield, it is not the case. Other thing is that I think product companies, when ISA 95 came in by 97, 98, ISA 95 segregated the layers, and the product companies had targeted products for those layers. And when they set up those targeted products, the next wave came about the integration of those layers, right? Those layers of ISA 95 need not necessarily meant how the products are to be made. In fact, that meant how the information has to be processed, perceived at the operator level, at the senior level, and then probably the KPI level, right? So I think the takeoff that we have had in the product industry, largely the cost product, I think they missed on building the platform early on, and we went on cost product. But I think now that we have platforms available, we I think can cover majority of those things for the greenfield. So greenfield, I think the amount of investment probably that we need to do is fairly low with respect to brownfield one.
Okay.
Brownfield, the challenges is about the modernization and getting them ready for Industry 4.0, being them making them data ready, and then bringing them to the platform, and then on top of that doing something. That's one. And second thing is the older system which are there for quite some time invested, and then we are trying to ensure that we squeeze every penny out of that investment that we have done in the past, right? So I think that's a call that probably the management should look into, that whether it makes sense to continue to stick to those and then bringing in new integration tools, and then bringing in the platform on top of it, having these kind of heterogeneity still in the system, or should they take a call. So this is more of a management decision that goes back, and not every company is brave enough to take those decisions, because these are like once in a lifetime decisions. People can stick to a single system or tech stack for more than a decade or something like that, right? So we should also probably look at the technology investment just the way that we look at the plant investment. The plant investment, we plan to look at maybe 10 to 15 years of our investment return window. If that's the kind of a view that we give it to the technology investment also, I think I don't really see that a very costly affair. Is that the moment we invest in a software, we want it to be working next day. That doesn't happen, right? But
Yeah.
when we invest in a reactor, when we invest in a plant, we say, okay, we'll monetize it for next 15 years and then look into it. So that means our strategy has to be long term in the technology
Absolutely.
investment also. And we also need to see what call to take, because some of the brownfields, if they are not really too old, they probably, it will be much easier to bring onto the cloud or onto the data fabric for that matter. But if there is really very, very old, I remember working for a plant in about 10 years ago, which was already 35 years old. So it's around 45-year-old plant, and then doing an investment on those things, it definitely makes a case for management to think about it, how to really look into that one. So
Sure.
that's my 2 bits around it. Yeah.
Right. So there is another one quick question, and before which I hand over to Thomas. The adoption of this is from Praveen Singhi. The adoption of SaaS applications for laboratory and quality solutions in India is still in its early stages, with a strong preference for on-premises systems. What are your thoughts in the near future? Will we have SaaS model accepted for all pharma? Um, does anyone want to take it? Phani, you want to come in here?
Yeah, I think this is actually a difficult question at this point, because I think this is actually a place where whatever systems we put in the plants, there are two key factors determining this, right? One is obviously the connectivity and the network speeds and near real-time backups and associated works that go in. So the SaaS platforms still have some distance to go in some of these, and people feel a little bit more comfortable that I have a server that sits in the plant and it's that much responsive. I think the second element is the technology partners themselves are still in the works, right? It's easier to move your CRM system onto a SaaS platform, and it's
Right.
okay once in a while if you can't log a doctor call or not doing something else and so on. So I think it's actually a tricky space, and I think this is something for us to watch how this will evolve. But even in our cloud journey, I think this has been a place where we treaded slowly. We've been very watchful on what we will take to the cloud, and what we will keep on-prem. I think this is a journey. I don't think we are. It's very early, like the question is rightly saying here.
Sure, sure. So thanks so much for that. All three are experts. Really got us on some major thinking hats. Hopefully, the industry will be able to pick up the signals, and I think there is a little more to go for us to complete our conversation. Thank you again, our panel experts. Thomas, we are all set to hear your expertise on the subject. So the stage is yours. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about plant to cloud and some of the issues that we are seeing across the industry. For those of you who I have not met, my name is Tom McCarthy. I'm the industry principal for life sciences from AVEVA. I've been in the industry for about 35 years at this time, and been at AVEVA for about 6 or 7 now. I've been in this role for about 3 years, and trying to give you a flavor for some of the things that are happening, and things that we're talking to and with our customers. I like to lead off with this particular slide because it does kind of talk to a lot of the items that we've been talking about from our panel discussion here today. These are some of the industry and market pressures that we see. There's definitely a pressure today in today's market towards utilizing big data and analytics within the industry, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the kind of interesting challenges that are happening. But the expectation really is we're expecting to see a significant savings to the tune of $6 to $9 billion industry wide through the use of digital and analytics. And honestly, it's been shown pretty convincingly that you can get a 5 to 15% bottom line improvement in specific pockets within your operations by applying digital technologies. We're also experiencing a skills mismatch, and we heard a little bit about that the difference between, let's say, the mature generation and the newer generation. But and that's very in line with your industry peers, saying basically, 67% of the CEOs say reskilling and upskilling staff is an effective method to overcome talent scarcity. One other interesting statistic I'd like to put out there is, and this applies to the United States, I'm not sure so much about India, but it's pretty much a worldwide phenomenon that baby boomer generation is retiring, and right now in the United States we have about 500,000 people, more people exiting the workforce than are entering the workforce, and that trend continues now for another decade or so. So, we're going to see, barring any significant immigration or things of that sort, a significant change in the size of the workforce, and we're going to have to do more with less, so to speak. We talked a little about the cost of regulatory pressures ever increasing, and the more you digitalize your plants and your systems, hopefully your regulatory cost and the cost of that burden goes down. And then finally, we didn't talk a little bit about this, but certainly disruption in supply chain has been a major issue and continues to be a major issue. There's lots of drugs these days on short supply, in ways that they haven't been in the past. And, particularly coming out of the pandemic. But, there's very much a focus on how do we see and deal with the fact that we need more agility in the industry going forward. So we talk about trends and business imperatives. We're seeing very much a growth of biotech and personalized medicine within the industry. R&D cycles, we'll talk a little bit more about this, are definitely increasing, and the number of yields that are occurring within the yield, if you will, from a success rate of a given drug that's discovered and filed is definitely going down. Newer drugs have smaller production volumes. There are definitely lots of new methods to produce these drugs as well. Changing workforce and more complex products. And honestly, one of the most exciting things I think I've seen is the desire to work collaboratively with ecosystem partners, and I'll talk quite a bit about that. We also see the need to simplify regulatory compliance, improve time to market, and tech transfer between plants, whether they're within a network or between a license holder and a CMO, for example. Right first time process efficiency is always a priority, as well as collaboration and the connected worker. The big fundamental truth of life sciences is the big fundamental truth within life sciences. The big fundamental truth of life sciences is around the drug discovery process, right? So within the drug discovery process, you spend a lot of time up front, conducting clinical trials, making sure that things are safe and effective as medication is a 20, but and you have to file fairly early in the game, to protect your intellectual property, and yet you really don't start to recoup that investment, if you will, until significantly into the process, 8 to 10 or even maybe 12 years of the 20-year expected patent life. It now takes about $2 billion to bring a new product to market, and then at the end of a a cycle of when things do go off patent, you know, the market value of the drug drops quite rapidly, you know, such that, you know, essentially, you know, you're constantly in a chase to find the next product. And, you know, you know, there's a pretty healthy market in most countries now for generic drugs as well. And you know, you know, those materials that are off patent, but you know, that's still, even though they are off patent and now generic, the same kind of quality consideration apply. I'm gonna skip that slide. One of the things that we do see though is, you know, we're kind of all used to, you know, the kind of S95 model. We talked a little bit about that previously, where, you know, we have a business planning and supply chain, commonly called ERP systems, you know, at the corporate level. You know, we talked a little bit about MES type systems, LIMS and things of that sort at level 3, and then automation systems of various types you know, at the truly at the shop floor with the, you know, that operate the machinery. And this is something that we're pretty familiar with, I think. But increasingly, what we're seeing really is a move to a model that looks something like this, where, you know, we have desires to talk to outside entities, right? So it can be things like whether they're equipment vendors for having people monitor the health of equipment, material supply partners, so that, you know, we know when we need to have materials delivered, and you know that if materials are going to be late and things of that sort. You know, contract manufacturing partners, that's very common, from certainly in a CDMO scenario. But also, you know, I didn't have this on this slide, but how about regulators, right? We had a presentation last year at our conference from a company that makes basically medical waste destruction equipment. And they actually have worked with their regulators to allow the regulators to dial into their portal to obtain all of the data related to the regulation of the medical waste destruction at various hospitals that they operate with, that they partner with. So you know, I think as we go forward, I think there's going to be more and more desire for regulators to see data and operations in real time, and you know, or you know, certainly almost real time as we go forward. Some of the key trends that are occurring in life sciences is a move towards continuous manufacturing, right? As we go towards smaller production volumes, most of the major companies now have programs to drive towards continuous manufacturing to either obtain greater efficiency. They streamline drug production. You know, they get less energy usage, so they have better ESG goals. And then they also have integrated processes to ensure that speed does not come at the cost of quality. They're also applying process analytical technology and those types of methods. It reduces production times and costs, prevents batch rejections, and really enhances the automation control. And then they're also going down the path of process modeling to refine the process steps, to economize operations, you know, and design more effective facilities. All of these things rely upon good quality production data and data integrity. And yet, data integrity remains a huge issue in the industry. You know, you can see in the last 5 years or so, you know, about 50% of all of the 483s that are issued by the US FDA are about, you know, involve some form of data integrity. And, you know, if you look at the number of warning letters that have been issued, This is kind of the distribution of warning letters last year. You know, because you can see, you know, the nature of the 483s that you know that have occurred within the industry. You know, you know, by far the largest category is or you know, deviation, if you will, is the use of original data. You know, and then, you know, followed by, you know, is it attributable, as well as is it accurate? And that's over 3/4 of the deviations. And you can kind of see where the data integrity findings are, you know, divided into topics. By far the biggest one, again, is original data, system controls, and then a significant amount actually is perception of data manipulation. And that's really a bad thing, I think, from both from a regulatory perspective, obviously, but also from a brand reputation perspective. And I think, you know, frequently when we talk regulatory, we don't really necessarily think about the brand reputation, but that's also an important consideration when we talk about, you know, particularly data manipulation. Nobody wants to be accused of falsifying data. You know, these are the fundamentals of data integrity. We talked a little bit about the Alcoa principle. Obviously, you know, when we're talking about paper records, this is very important, but there are similar kind of methodologies you need to apply when you do digitize your processes. And we at AVEVA think that that our systems will, you know, are set up with it to operate within those guidelines from the FDA. And, you know, managing operations data is extremely complex. You know, we've got lots of legacy data sources. We've got, you know, 21 CFR compliance. We've got, you know, time series analytics that need to be applied. You know, all kinds of different things that make OT data really complex. You know, but, you know, ultimately, you know, you can collect all the data you want. We also at AVEVA think that it's important to contextualize data, right? So you can have all the trend data that you want, but at the end of the day, you have to translate it so that you know that, for example, a particular instrument belongs to a particular piece of equipment, and it represents the temperature of that piece of equipment, and it's a regulated tag, and it's located at a particular site. Once you have that kind of recognition and delineation of process data, then you can perform analytics on it. You can do calculations. You can figure out what the average uptime for a given piece of equipment is, or maybe the total energy usage, something along those lines. You can apply limits to it and say, okay, we're operating correctly, or we're deviating from normal. And, you know, when things do deviate from normal, we can kind of figure out figure out a block of time that when it was, and put a particular marker in the record to say, okay, you know, at 9:50 it went out of normal, and at 9:58 it went back into normal. And then we can also issue notifications from that. And then, you know, we are currently in the process of bringing a new product to market. Currently, it's called it's AVEVA Data Hub. It's been recently rebranded as AVEVA Connect. But basically, that is a cloud offering whereby we very strongly believe that the future of this particular space is as a hybrid scenario, where you're going to, you know, we will have on-premises systems for the foreseeable future, particularly in this industry. But there actually are use cases, you know, that are enhanced and valuable to have some of your data within, you know, in a cloud kind of an environment. particularly for those that you want, particularly when you want to share data with your ecosystem partners, right? So today you can keep all of your operation and your business critical processes, if you will, on premises, but you can also partner with whether that's a cloud analytics company, whether it's a CMO type of a relationship, or potentially it's an equipment vendor that you want to do an equipment as a service kind of offering with. You can utilize a tool such as AVEVA Connect or AVEVA Data Hub to exchange data in a secure way, and only the data you want to exchange with your partners. I want to talk a little bit actually about some use case that we're going to be presented by. It has been presented by Hoffman LaRoche that is related to Connect Data Services. They have been going down a cloud journey for a while. Like a lot of the majors, they want to trying to combine all of the data into one big data lake, if you will, for a while to support analytics. But one of the things that they noticed was the data got very big. When they did that, they've got a very complex complex landscape. They've got 30 or 35 different sites, and they wanted to pull all the data together up into the cloud to perform analysis on it. They did a pilot with us earlier this year, and they presented this result at Hanover Messe. They're going to present an update next month at AVEVA World in Paris on their journey here. But they were able to see, essentially a major reduction in the data consumption costs. They were able to reduce their petabytes within the data lake back down to terabytes. They're looking at a potential reduction of approximately 70 servers within their entire system landscape by moving the data more to a cloud environment, and then accelerating the time to market for industrial data products. So, that was one of their goals, was to get, how do we get the data quickly to the cloud? They wanted to, they want to establish a data mesh to integrate with existing applications as well as others. One of their big goals is to get after digital maintenance, right? So how do we apply AI and ML and things like that to equipment to find those nuggets of information, nuggets of value, so that they're operating their equipment well, that their equipment isn't, about to fail, things of that sort. Basically, find out that the elevator is going to break in 2 weeks and get the maintenance done now as opposed to post failure. So, this is one of their use cases that they connected a centrifuge to the that was involved in their biopharma process. They basically used AI and ML, which is also part of our Connect platform, what we call advanced analytics. They were able to develop a model really quick and monitor the threshold for vibrations, triggered actions. And within a couple of days, they actually found significant problems with the way that their centrifuge had been operating. And they project that this is going to be a significant win for them across a lot of their equipment, particularly their rotating equipment. This, you can see, they were able to find anomalies in their operations, and then notify the appropriate people when those problems occurred. So in summary, the application of digital systems is increasingly expected within the life science industry, both for internal as well as external stakeholders. Adoption of digital systems is not without challenges, particularly on the data integrity front. The availability of good quality manufacturing data can be used to support many different use cases, regulatory as well as non-regulatory use cases. So if you are a license holder, you're probably already going down this journey today. Adoption of new production methodologies, whether that's continuous manufacturing or maybe PAT, requires a lot of good quality manufacturing data to be effective. And you're probably already seeing that do that journey. If it hasn't come to your plant, there's probably a plan in place to do that. If you're a CMO or a CDMO, you're probably also seeing that. Your customers are increasingly asking for views into your operations, as it happens in near real time to help optimize their processes that you are running for them. If you haven't heard that yet, then I would think that you will be in the not too distant future, because we talk about that a lot, and a lot of people are very much interested in doing those types of relations. I can give you a data point from the pandemic, where Pfizer was very much looking to they were a manufacturer of the COVID vaccine. They were very much, and they worked with a significant number of CMOs and CDMOs to to amplify their production capacity, to get the vaccine out as fast as possible. And they actually were working with a number of customers on just this. How do we see your production data so that we can help you be successful producing the vaccine for us? So, I would suspect that that's going to be a new way of operating in the not too distant future. And if you're a generics manufacturer today, the adoption of digital technologies will greatly increases your regulatory journey. I think we heard that today during our panel discussion. And new products and new production methods, that are coming down the pike will require the adoption of such systems. I will also comment that most of the major customers that I'm speaking with on a regular basis today have processes in place whereby, some of these advanced data types of systems, whether it's PAT or modeling or continuous manufacturing or anything along those lines, will be, part of the regulatory filing in the not too distant future. They all are, in the phase, late phase 2 or phase 3 of actually, and they're actually negotiating with the FDA today to how do we utilize tools like that, from a regulatory perspective, and there's really very much in the seeking guidance on how do we make this, what information do we need to provide to you to prove that this is a worthwhile venture. So, once that happens, as we all know, we will, that will not stop. That's where the world is going. So with that, I will turn it back over to the moderator, and I thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Thomas. This was really very valuable. Thank you also for being up so early in the morning to be with us for this
You're
presentation.
welcome.
Extremely good examples that you have given us of Roche, and also about the Pfizer vaccine illustration, and also about the beautiful breakup on the data integrity issues. So it's adoption of digital solutions, and how cloud is the next level to go to is the real message. I also want to thank our panelists who spared some 1 hour of their valuable time for this extremely important discussion. The key takeaways are very clear. It's about 3 or 5 years of journey to be compliant, and to ensure that you don't have any operational issues. Thomas, you mentioned about reputation or image management, and that's also so important, especially from what we have seen in the past decade or so. So thank you so much, everyone who has been able to attend this very important webinar. We'll be coming back to you more often on more interesting topics, and also keep a view on where exactly things are heading on this particular topic. So thank you so much again, all the attendees, and please do keep an eye on our newsletters, which hit your inboxes every morning from ET Pharma. There's a lot of information in there for you. which could be very, very interesting and insightful. So thank you so much again. Thank you, Thomas. Have a great day ahead, and we'll
Thank
come
you.
back.